Okay, so everybody should have open their packet now, so we can start going through the packet. Okay, so here, have your packet for chapter 3 from Canada. Your assignment yesterday was to go over fun activities in buildings. So that's essentially what we're going to be looking at today. Okay, so chapter 3, Canada packet out, open to 3.6. So we can go through 3.6 and 3.7 today. If you are watching this as a video, please pause until you have it open. Okay, everybody in class, are you good to go? You got it open? Yes, fabulous. Okay, here we go. So section 6, this one is looking at activities, like fun things, interesting things to do in the area, okay? So they're looking at what you do with your spare time and how it's, taken up. So this section 6, remember, had the oodles of vocabulary. So let's start with Atlantic region. Okay, so who would like to tell me what the Atlantic region, what's the weather like and what do they do for fun? Okay, Cassidy. Okay, good. So first of all, we should say it's a humid continental climate in which winters can be wet and a bit chilly. Okay. And then as Cassidy said, what sport was invented there? Ice hockey. Okay, so it's the birthplace of hockey was Nova Scotia. And it's like field hockey, but they can play it on the ice. So my picture was of a hockey player with a Canadian maple leaf on there. Okay, did everybody say something about hockey? Yes, did everybody say something about humid continental climate? Okay, if not, add that. Humid continental climate, hockey. Okay, good one. Next one, core region. What happened in the core region? What do they do there? What's the weather like? Okay, Gemma. Yep, in the south, it's humid continental. Okay, so in the core region, they have a humid continental climate. Good. Okay, what kinds of things do they do there for fun? Caroline. Okay, good. Where do they do that? On what kind of body of water? Not sure? Okay, Philip? Yeah, on the canal. Good. So, and they call it Winterlude, which is, like we have Summerfest, they have Winterlude, and it's in Ottawa. And the canal, which is basically like this main waterway right through the middle of the city, freezes. And so they'll use that for ice skating and sleigh rides when it's wintertime. Okay, so Cameron, the ice carving, you like that? Yeah. Yeah, they'll do ice carvings and stuff there too. So they'll have races and contests and ice carvings. Anything else that they'd have there? That's why I put an ice carving there. 7? Say what? Yeah, they can ice skate. Yep, ice skating. Cassidy? Yes. So you can eat at a cafe carved out of ice. I don't know, sitting down on that seat might be a little chilly if you ask me. Okay, so obviously in the winter, they can use this canal for skating and sleigh rides. But in the summer, they're going to use it for like boats. So boats can go up and down. But then in the winter, when it's frozen, it's like this huge ice rink that people can skate up and down. So it's going to depend what, season it is for them to depend on what they're doing. Okay, so there's my ice carving. All right, next one, prairie region. Who can tell me about the prairie region? Sophia. Yes, they have a semi-arid that should say south. Semi-arid and the, uh-oh. Go back, undo. Undo, undo. Well, that was weird. Okay, well, I guess we'll just go here and we'll just leave it as the soft. Okay, so the semi-arid in the south, that should say, so it needs a U. It's semi-arid in the south. Good. What else can you tell me, Julia? Okay, so in the north, it is subarctic. So the average temperature in Churchill in January is -16. Average. That's pretty cold. Thank you. Caitlin. Yes, it's the polar bear capital of the world. So they pass through as they're migrating. And so that's where people might go. And we saw in the video in the prairie region, I think that was the part where the polar bear like kind of jumped up on the truck, you know, as they were watching. So that's where people would go. And they go through there sort of as they're migrating and moving from one place to the next. All right, good. So I got a picture of polar bears there. All right, Pacific region. What can you tell me about the climate in the Pacific region? Amelia? Good. Marine West Coast climate, which makes sense because it's on the West Coast. Crazy how that happens. All right, tell me about their weather. Philip. Correct. So the average temperature is 37. So obviously it gets colder, but it also gets warmer than that. So it's a bit more mild, shall we say, than the prairie region. Okay, good. What do they do for fun? Julia. Yeah, they did windsurfing. So they like bundled themselves up and then they basically went out on the water, the cold water in the winter, but they put on like special suits and stuff. I don't know, that doesn't sound like fun to me, but okay. All right, and what else would they do? One other activity. Aurelie. Yep. Some of the best ski resorts are there near the Rocky Mountains. So there's my picture of windsurfing. All right. Okay, how about the northern area? What can you tell me about the northern area, Max? Good, they have sled dog races there. What else? Amelia. Good, so the north is a tundra, which means treeless. There really aren't very many plants. It's too cold for trees to actually dig their roots down in the ground and then grow up. So it's very empty. Okay, Cameron? Okay, good. So in the south, it's a subarctic climate. So it's still pretty cold because look, this is the temperature in Whitehorse in July. The average temperature is only 57. Okay, so while it might have a day that, oh my gosh, it hit 75, okay, that is not common. I could not take that. I need to be able to wear my flip-flops. Okay, so then Max said that there's dog sleds that go up to 1,000 miles in 2 weeks. So like races and things like that. And now they don't use dog sleds to get around. What do they use today? Yeah, Brianna? Yeah, today they use all-terrain vehicles, ATVs, to get around because we talked about that there really aren't very good roads. And so it makes it really hard to get from place to place. So they may just hop on their ATV to get to school, to get to the grocery store, things like that, to grab what they need to. Because sled dogs, you know, we don't use those as common transportation anymore. All right. How did we do on that section with the notes? That's the notes part. Thumbs up. Okay, now I'm ready for some definitions. So I hope people are ready to go with those. All right, so first part, definitions. Humid continental. Molly, what does humid continental mean? Very good. A climate or climate zone with warm, rainy summers and cool, snowy winters. Excellent. What is precipitation, Ben? Yep. So precipitation is the moisture that falls from the sky as rain, snow, sleet, or hail. Look at that picture, huh? That guy looks miserable. So sad. Okay, how about semi-arid? What does semi-arid mean? Caroline. Perfect. So dry, not a lot of rainfall, hot, dry summers, cool, dry winters. Very good. Okay, how about subarctic? Subarctic. Nadia. Very good. A climate or climate zone with cold, snowy winters, cool, rainy summers. Okay, not really flip-flop weather. Gonna maybe get warm enough for pants and a t-shirt if you're lucky. Okay, next one then. Marine West Coast. Marine West Coast. Sophia. Very good. Warm summers, cool winters, and it rains a lot. Never gets really warm, never gets really cold, but it kind of rains constantly. All right, the tundra. Devin. Very good. Okay, so very cold winters. The summers are cold. There's not much rain or so because it's too cold to even evaporate and become, wet again. Treeless plains. So you can see the picture here. The flowers that grow, the mosses and lichens and flowers that grow very, very close to the ground. And then they end up, there's only a couple months where it's warm enough for that to happen. They can't grow very tall. And then that's kind of the end of that. Okay, so only some grasses, a couple small, little scrubs, flowers, things like that. But as you can see, no trees. So the tundra does not have any trees. Okay, now we're ready to move on to section 7. Section 7 is about the buildings. Okay, and looking at the buildings associated with that area. So let's start with the Atlantic region, home of the seafood. Okay, so Natalia. Elena. Very good. And what's the point of the lighthouses? Yeah, so many lighthouses to help the sailors know where the land is so they don't go barreling into the rocks and things like that. Okay, so it's basically just to give them kind of a sense of here's where you're located so that you have an idea of kind of where you need to go. There's still hundreds of them in operation today. And that's why when we were watching the video, I specifically pointed out, what building is that? And you go, oh, that's a lighthouse. Yes. Okay, so lighthouses associated with the Atlantic region. Okay, what about the core region? What are we going to find in the area where most of the people actually live? Okay, Devin. Very good. So they have much of a British and French influence. Okay, British and French influence. All right, what kinds of specific style do they have, like for the Parliament building? Caroline? Very good. Gothic Revival. So the Parliament building is referred to as Gothic Revival. Okay. And they oftentimes have what sorts of buildings? How did they describe what the buildings looked like? Amelia? Okay, Ariana? Very good. So large stone buildings. So here's kind of an example of one. Big stone building. Tall pointed windows. Okay. They've got different, like spires almost on the top. Carved different ornaments throughout to kind of make it look fancy. And then the last part, the example that they talked about was Chateau Frontenac. Probably not pronouncing that right. Sorry, French speakers. It's a hotel in Quebec. And that's a typical example of what it looks like. Again, in the video, that was like the very last scene. There were guys that were sitting on a hill overlooking the water, and there was a big hotel in the background. That's what that was. Okay, so you can go back and look at the video to see that. All right, next part then, the prairie region. What kinds of buildings are we going to find in the prairie region? Okay, Caitlin. Okay, so a typical farm with a silo, and the silo is going to be used to grow grain. So what specifically are they growing there? What crop are they growing? Amelia? Spring wheat, very good. So they grow spring wheat, they plant it in the spring, and then they harvest it in the summer. And they do that because it can withstand harsh winters. And so their whole crop and soil isn't going to just fall apart because of that. So they've got, it's chilly up there sometimes. So they've got to have a crop that can sort of deal with the cold. Okay. So that's what a silo looks like. And that's what they put the grain and things like that in it for the winter. Okay, so next part then, the Pacific region. What kind of things are we going to find in the Pacific region? Ariana? Most of them look like castles. Good. What else can we say about it? Devin? Good. So Victoria was the first British city that was found there. And so it's definitely it's mostly a British influence. It's called British Columbia for a reason. Okay, and so then as we just mentioned, the buildings often look kind of castle-like. Okay. So we've had lighthouses, Gothic revival, silos, castle-like buildings, and now we get to the northern area. What sort of building are we going to find there, Cameron? We're going to find what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Igloos, thank you. Somebody's coughing over here. That's okay. Okay, so on this part, they've got really long winters. Okay, so back in the day, they needed something that was going to protect them from the wind and cold. And you can see this is a good example of what the Inuit would build. Igloo is the word for house, and it would be made from snow, different like blocks of snow, sod, stone, or wood. Today, people don't live in igloos, but they're gonna make some like kits oftentimes that are made in factories, because the building season is so short that it's much easier to bring a side of a house already done in, and you basically just take it and place it where it needs to be so that you have the outside, and then you can kind of build from there on the inside when it's not as cold. So these kits are made in factories to build their houses. Okay. And today they have widely scattered villages that are normally going to be near the water, but not particularly large, big cities. Remember, the northern region only has 100,000 people in the whole area. So they've got small groups of people who kind of gather in a spot. And then that's kind of the little house, but there's, little village, but there's not going to be any like majorly big cities there. Okay. Questions on that part? All right. So one of the things you're gonna do today is finish the rest of tonight's packet. Make sure you're really reading the pages. Section 8 are how they make a living. And then there's basically just like the summary parts to sort of wrap things up. So the summary only has 2 vocabulary words. Section 8 has 3 vocabulary words, and then the notes on the 5 sections. So that's not particularly long. Okay. All righty, let me get this out of the way. So today we went over the notes. Okay, now we're going to use this practice sheet. So now I'm going to give you some time to click on this, open this up. It says buildings and fun, exclamation point, practice. Okay, you're going to fill this out. And then when you're done, click off of it, go back, click it again until you get them all right. Maybe you'll get them all right the first time.
Miss Kabalowski, we
Yes.
can't see your screen.
Oh, you can't see my screen again, this silly thing. Okay, so it's gonna look like this. Now, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so right here, you click on this sheet. Okay, when you click on the sheet, it's gonna look like this. So I just want you to practice it numerous times until you get there. When you're done practicing that, there's a Quizlet here just on 6 and 7. All right, so I'm gonna give you about 20 minutes to do the sheet numerous times, the Quizlet a bunch of times, and then we're gonna get going on the quizzes before we actually take the quiz. Questions on what you're doing the next 25 something minutes? Okay, use your time wisely.